Okay, everyone. So we're back here with our evolving code story, and where we left off last was sort of discussing this idea of strings. So one of our more basic parts of speech and programming is the string, and as mentioned, the way you know that something is a string is that it is surrounded by double quotation marks, or rather, not the way you know it, the way the computer knows it. The computer knows it because it's surrounded by double quotation marks. So I want to revisit at this point our earlier example of Ms. Marks. Okay, so Ms. Marks in this case is not surrounded by double quotation marks, and what that means is anytime something is not surrounded by double quotation marks, then the computer is going to expect to have been introduced to whatever it is beforehand, right? You can think of it as a character. So anything that you don't put quotation marks around, generally speaking, as long as it isn't a number or some other data type, it's going to go, right, well, oh, you're asking me to tell you about that thing, Mr. Smith, Ms. Marks. And as we saw before, if we do this, it's going to complain that it doesn't know. So, oh, I forgot to do this. If I do here, I come back, and it says, uncaught reference error, Ms. Marks is not defined. You have not introduced me to this person. Now, I'm just going to pause for 1 second here. But we can take a different approach to this, right? And we can say, or rather, we can always tell the computer to parrot back to us a string, right? So a string, it doesn't need to be introduced to ahead of time because all it's going to do is literally repeat back what we say. So in this case, if I wanted to say Ms. Marks, all I'm asking it to do in this console log statement, I'm saying, hey, what is the name Ms. Marks? And it says, yeah, the name is Ms. Marks, as opposed to saying, when I don't have the quotations, I'm essentially saying, who is Ms. Marks? And then it's like, I have no idea who you're talking about. So we can see this because if I come back here, I've locked my, my console log back in. It says, okay, I know that Mr. Smith exists. I don't know anything about him. You asked me to say the name Ms. Marks, right? To say the string Ms. Marks, so I can say that to you. But if you ask me who Ms. Marks is, I'm going to tell you I have never even been introduced to her. And this is the essence of strings. We use strings all the time. They are names, they are places, they are text, right? Pretty straightforward. As we said in the, we use them to describe things. Now, that's a sort of first basic part of speech. A second one is going to be let's say another thing like we want to sort of talk about numbers. So a number is pretty straightforward. It's exactly what you would expect. It's a numeral or decimal. It can be positive or negative. It can have any sort of well-defined numerical value. So I can just sort of say bar Smith age. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead again and do this sort of direct assignment. I'm going to say equals 47. Okay, so again, remember our typography discussion that we use color, we use typography to indicate various things. So we know when this appears white that the computer is going, oh, okay, this is, I think this is going to have significance later. This is actually in script, in JavaScript, right? Not to be confused with what happens up here. In JavaScript, if something is white, it means, oh, I think this is a variable. You were telling me this is the label for a box in memory. We see the amber color of the equal sign, again, indicating that it has a special meaning. And then the red is its way of saying, oh, this is a number. I understand this is a number. So now I can say, we can keep going here. So I'm going to say console log Smith age, right? And it says, let's see what we should get. We should get 47 popping out here. Yep, 47. And notice this is all happening in order, right? It's going top to bottom, left to right. So as we put things above and below, it's influencing what's visible when. And we can do, because this is a true number, we can do work to it, right? So we could say, what is Smith age divided by 2, right? Come back here, IS 23.5. Now, but if we put double quotes around this, what has Smith's what has Smith age become? It is now a string. We've now put a string into that box rather than a number. And if we just ask it, hey, what is Smith age? The result on the other end is going to look pretty much the same, right? It's going to say, you know, it's 47, right? So we see here it says, well, that's a result of our other one. But actually, if you notice here, even in the console window, we're seeing some indication of what it thinks is going on. This 47 comes out black, and that's our string 47. Let's see what happens if we do it without, if we use it as a true number. It's blue. Okay, so again, the computer is telling us at various intervals, this is what I think is going on. This is what I understand about the values, the information that you're giving me. And so even though they look mostly the same, what's going to happen when we do this? Well, obviously you can divide the number 47 by 2. How do you divide a string? Aha! So this is an interesting example. In this case, the computer has said, oh, you know what? You wanted that to be a number, right? It's like helping us out. It's like, well, you know, I know that you said that it's in quotation marks. I know you said that, and that it's really a string, but you know, you tried to do division on it, so I think you actually want to treat it as a number. This can get a little tricky sometimes because there are moments where we want to do certain types of activities, we want to do certain types of actions on a value, and it's going to matter whether it's a string or a number. So it's something to keep an eye out for. Always make sure that when you want something to be a number, you leave it as a number. And if you want it to be a string, right, maybe it's a label, right? Maybe it's you know, maybe it's like, I don't know, a school ID number, right? You don't really want to do math on it, in which case you want to make it a string. So those are strings and numbers. The next sort of one of the most common data types is an array or a list. So I am going to create something called Smith's Friends. And this is going to be a list of, oh gosh, I can't come up with any more names. Smith items. Okay, so these will be items in his bakery. And the point about lists in programming languages is that they actually follow the similar conventions that we follow when we write out lists in English. We indicate that we are creating a list by putting square brackets around it. And for each item, we're going to say, oh, okay, he offers rolls, heroes, baguettes. Okay? And what I want to highlight for you here, I'm just going to take off the square brackets for a second, is that, what do we notice? There are commas between each item, or, you know, between each item in the list, right? And we don't put a comma at the end, right? If you were writing out a list at the end of an English sentence, you wouldn't put a comma at the end, you'd put a period. In this case, we do the same thing. We use these square brackets to say, hey, look, this is a list of items, and I'm going to put that semicolon on the end. That is my programming period. And I can do things, so now I can console log this, right? It doesn't matter that there's more than one thing. That's one of the great parts of arrays, of having these lists. And it says, okay, here are your things. Now, here's something else. I can also use its position, okay? So one of the things that computers like to do is count. So one thing that we'll always want to know is how many things are in this list. And so you can ask it how many things are in the list, and we're using a built-in function. We'll talk about functions and built-in functions in class. I can say, how long is this list? Let's see if I did this correctly. Yep, and it says, yep, it's 3 items long. And I say, great, tell me what the first, I just want you to tell me what the first item in the list is. So the way that we indicate that is we actually say, okay, I have Smith items. I know that it is a bracketed list. So give me the first item in that list, right? And in fact, let's do both. Let's look at both the list itself and the first item. Okay, so I'm saying, okay, what is Smith items? It's going to give me the list. And I'm going to say, okay, what's the first item in Smith items? And here, and uh-oh, wait a second. What happened there? So what we run into here is just a quirk of computers. Computers start counting at 0. They always have. They probably always will. There are occasionally instances where this doesn't happen, but for the most part, the first item in any list in a programming language is going to have a position, or what we refer to as an index of 0. So if I want the first item, I have to ask for item 0. And there it is. So now, one of the last and sort of most useful and significant data types that we have is an object. And I'm going to make Mr. Smith himself an object. Now, I've already introduced Mr. Smith, right? So there is a box that is waiting with the label Mr. Smith on it, but as we know, I haven't actually put anything in there yet. Well, Mr. Smith is a complex guy. He's got a lot going on. But just for the start, we're just going to kind of describe him physically a little bit. And the way that we do this with an object is we use curly braces. So again, arrays are surrounded by square brackets. Objects surrounded by curly braces, right? Okay. So what I do when I create an object, I'm going to describe Mr. Smith. I'm going to describe him by attributes, okay? So what are some of his attributes? I can give him hair color, right? And I can say, well, you know what his hair color is? Hair color is brown. And also I can say his height, right? He is, let's say, 71 inches. So I'll just say 71. Height is 71. And what do we say? We said I can put his age in here too. In fact, sometimes that might be easier, right? Because what's nice about this is I'm collecting a lot of attributes about Mr. Smith in one place, in that box. I'm putting all the important stuff about him in that box. And I can say age is, I said he was 47. Okay. So now I can first of all say, well, tell me computer, at this moment in time, tell me everything you know about Mr. Smith. Okay? And it's going to say, well, this is what I know. I know he's got hair color brown, height of 71, and an age of 47. And I can say, okay, well, you know what? Actually, all I want to know is, what is Mr. Smith's, right? And so when I want to ask for the value of a property or an attribute of an object, I just use a dot. I say, tell me about Mr. Smith's hair color. Okay? And it's going to say, well, I looked it up, and his hair color is brown. You notice that I can have numbers in here as well as strings. I can also have other objects and other arrays. What if I ask for something that I haven't described? I'm going to say pencil log Mr. Smith profession, right? I haven't told it about his profession. Let's see what happens. Oh, undefined. I don't know what that is. You haven't told me that yet. I know there's a Mr. Smith, but I don't know about this profession thing. And finally, I also have the option to say, well, you know what, actually, oops, sorry, I redeclared him there. You only say that this is Mr. Smith part once, and that's the variable part. After that, you just say Mr. Smith, right? You don't have to say Mr. Smith as a person. And then I can say, well, you know what, Mr. Smith dyed his hair. So I'm going to say Mr. Smith hair color, right, equals red. Okay, so now let's see what happens if we console log Mr. Smith hair color. So what do we get? There we go. It started out as red, but we are able to change it. So again, this is very similar to when we write a story. We start out, we introduce a person, we say, this is the character, and then we say, here's some interesting information about them. And through the course of the story, as circumstances change, we may change some of that information. But that's okay, because our reader, in this case our computer, right, can say, right, I'm going to just update that, and I'm going to remember that now, you know, he dyed his hair last week, and now his hair is red. So this is really kind of the heart of it, is this ability to create things and manipulate them. We do have one more little data type to talk about, which is Booleans, so we'll get to those in the next video. But in the meantime, you guys should just play around with this, you know, stick things in there, see what you get, and don't worry, because guess what? You really can't break it.